Hi, I'm Leapfrog.
Hello, my name is Logan Shaw, and welcome to LogansStory. Today we talk about gaming in the 1980s as our next pop culture history highlight. Thanks for coming, let's get started. The history of video games can be traced back to the 1940s and 1950s, when scientists and engineers began experimenting with computers. The first video games were simple, like tic-tac-toe or NIM, and were typically displayed on text-only screens or computer printouts. Tennis for Two was the first video game created for entertainment and was presented at expositions where teenagers queued up to play. Space War was one of the first video games to be available outside of a research institute and was developed by MIT student hobbyists. Computer Space was the first recognized arcade game and was created by Noah Bushnell and Ted Dabney. Pong was released and became an overnight sensation. The Magnavox Odyssey was also released and was the first home video game console. Atari released a home console version of Pogo through Sears. The arcade era began and video games became more accessible to the public. Home console revolutionized the way people play video games. Today, Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch, which allowed both television-based and handheld gaming. 2020, Sony released the PlayStation 5 and Microsoft released the Xbox Series X and Series S. Okay, so there's a seemingly big partisan when it comes down to talking about video games, especially in the 80s. But the thing is, when you talk about video games in terms of what we know about video games, where did it get its popularity? Space Invaders. And that was a big part of what we know now as one of the biggest video games in the 80s, the start of it. But it didn't get big there. Have you heard of Super Mario Brothers? Yeah, see, the thing is, Super Mario became one of the biggest video games ever known to man. Made by Nintendo, in actuality, a company that seems to know what to do with video games and how to make them fun. It's something that people enjoy and love as a predestination for future gaming. But here's the thing. What are the little nooks and crannies for what video games are? What is the difference between a player and a coder? What is the difference between a coder and someone else who's trying to tell a story through video gaming? Here's the thing, the big thing is this. What are video games? What can we do to get the nooks and crannies of why they're so important? Well, let's go into detail. So, there seems to be a big part of what we know now as video gaming. Video gaming seems to be one of those things that rolls and rolls and rolls. It doesn't stop, and it doesn't stop in popularity. I mean, so much so we got things like E3 and other things like Disney Interactive Studios and many other video games that branched from the stem of the 80s. But what did it get its multiplicity? Well, you can ask Gerald L. Lawson for that. First, I remember to think of cartridge gaming, changing and shifting games out of a machine. But when you think about it, and this is a very important part to take away from this, cartridge gaming changed the way everyone thought about video gaming. And in the 80s, that was something new. And people loved it. People loved it so much that people used it for different games, like Zelda, Super Mario Brothers, and much, much more. There's so much you can take away from this in terms of everything. But when you think about the nooks and crannies of the gaming, it really had pioneers to make sure the games came to life. But what does it mean for you and I? Well, application, of course. When you think about gaming in terms of the broad sense, there's a huge amount of gaming all over the world that you can play and enjoy because of so many people who put the work in terms of the 1970s to the 1980s. And the 80s being the golden age of video games ends up being your keepsake to what makes your game so great that you're playing right now. Whatever video game you're playing, think about it as an opportunity to thank those who put the program in line, who put the story in line, who put everything in line to make the video game so great. But what does this mean enticingly between you and I? Well, here's the thing. Video gaming is something that we can take under consideration as a blessing. And because of that, you can thank the creators for that. Sometimes you need to be a creator. But here's the thing. What are you doing to create? What are you doing to create the next big video game? What are you doing to create the next big trend? And I guess this big trend that's so close to Silicon Valley. But here's the thing. Make sure whatever you're making, make sure for whatever you're doing, you do it to the limitless bound the game had carried over for so many years. Then you come to the application, let's continue forward. Thank you for coming to LogansStory. Thank you for coming to this pop culture history highlight. There will be more highlights in the future, so keep an eye for those. Also, the mission is 1,000 subscribers. If you guys can help me get there, hit the share, like, and subscribe button right on the screen. Thank you again, and peace.